The judge asked who signed away parental rights to a mistress. She stood. The courtroom gasped. Her husband smiled until her father walked in. The richest man in America, owner of the hospital where the twins were born. The documents? Forged. She never signed anything. His smile died instantly. Adrianna Brooks sat alone on the wooden bench in family court, her hands folded in her lap like she was praying. Maybe she was. At 32 years old, she looked tired, not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the kind that settles in your bones when life keeps taking and taking until you got nothing left to give. Her clothes were simple, clean but worn. No jewelry except a thin gold chain around her neck, the kind you get from your grandmother and never take off. She clutched a manila folder against her chest, like it was the only thing keeping her together. Across the aisle, her husband Kwame sat with his back straight and his jaw set, looking like a man who already won. Next to him sat Simone Carter, the woman who'd been sleeping in Adrianna's bed for the past 6 months. Simone had that look, you know the one. Designer bag, fresh manicure, hair laid perfect, makeup on point. She touched Kwame's arm like she owned him, and maybe she did now. Behind them sat Kwame's mother Lorraine and his sister Tracy, both of them wearing smirks that said they'd been waiting for this day. The bailiff called the case. Brooks versus Brooks. Custody of minor children Caleb and Chloe Brooks, age 4. The twins Adrianna carried for 9 months, birthed in pain, raised with every ounce of love she had. The babies she sang to sleep every night while Kwame worked late, or said he was working late. Kwame's lawyer stood up, a slick-looking brother in an expensive suit that probably cost more than Adrianna made in 3 months. He laid papers on the judge's bench with the confidence of a man who never lost. Your Honor, we're presenting voluntary parental surrender documents signed by Mrs. Brooks 6 months ago, willingly transferring all parental rights to Miss Simone Carter, who has been serving as the primary caregiver for the minor children. The courtroom went quiet, that heavy kind of quiet that presses on your chest. Adrianna didn't move, didn't flinch, just stared straight ahead like she was looking at something nobody else could see. Lorraine leaned forward and whispered, but loud enough for half the courtroom to hear, "She probably sold them kids for drug money, always knew she was trash." Tracy laughed, covering her mouth, but not really. She was never fit to be a mother anyway. Look at her, can't even afford a decent outfit for court. Simone squeezed Kwame's hand and put on this concerned face, like she was some kind of saint stepping in to save poor, abandoned children. The performance was almost believable. The judge, an older black woman with gray locks and eyes that had seen everything, looked over her glasses at the papers, then at Adrianna. "Mrs. Brooks, do you recognize this signature as yours?" Adrianna took the papers with steady hands. She looked at them for a long moment, her lips moving slightly like she was reading every word. Then she looked up at the judge and said softly, "That's not my signature." Kwame shot to his feet. "Stop lying. You abandoned our kids for months. You couldn't handle being a mother, so you ran." Lorraine stood up too. "She don't deserve those babies, never did." Simone started crying, real tears and everything. "Your Honor, I've been raising them like my own. I love those children. I've been there for every doctor's appointment, every bedtime story, everything Adrianna walked away from." The judge banged her gavel. "Order! Everyone sit down." She turned back to Adrianna. "Mrs. Brooks, this is a serious allegation. Do you have any proof that this signature was forged?" Adrianna opened her folder slowly. Inside was a single envelope, old and yellowed at the edges like it had been carried around for years. She held it in her hands but didn't say nothing yet, just held it. Kwame smiled. That cruel kind of smile men wear when they think they broke you. "See, Your Honor, she got nothing. She's wasting the court's time." But there was something in Adrianna's eyes, something that didn't break, something that was just waiting. To understand that look, you gotta go back, way back. 25 years ago, in a small town in North Carolina, there was a little girl named Adrianna who lived with her grandmother in a house that was more love than money. The paint was peeling, the porch steps creaked, but inside it smelled like cornbread and collard greens and everything good. Her grandmother's name was Geneva, and everybody in town called her Miss Geneva out of respect. Adrianna's mama died giving birth to her. That's what Miss Geneva always said. Your mama loved you so much she gave her last breath to bring you here. Her father, well, Miss Geneva never talked much about him, just said he had to go away, and little Adrianna learned not to ask. They didn't have much. Miss Geneva worked cleaning houses for white folks across town, and young Adrianna would come with her sometimes during summer, playing quiet in the corner while her grandmother scrubbed floors on her knees. But Miss Geneva never complained, never said a bitter word. She'd just hum old spirituals while she worked, and Adrianna learned that strength ain't loud. Real power moves in silence. On Sundays, they went to the little Baptist church on the corner where Miss Geneva sang in the choir. After service, they'd walk home slow, and Miss Geneva would stop to check on elderly neighbors, bring them plates of food, sit with the ones who were lonely. Adrianna watched and learned. Kindness don't cost nothing. At night, Miss Geneva would braid Adrianna's hair on the porch while lightning bugs danced in the yard. "Baby girl," she'd say, her old hands gentle but sure. "You remember this. People gonna test you in this life, gonna try to make you small. But you got something in you that can't be made small. You hear me?" "Yes, ma'am," little Adrianna would say. "Don't matter what they take from you. Don't matter how hard it gets. You hold your head up. You stay kind. And when the time comes, you'll know who you really are." Adrianna didn't understand then. She was just 7 years old, more worried about jump rope and spelling tests than life lessons. But she felt the weight of those words, felt them settle in her bones. The years passed. Adrianna helped in the garden, studied hard at the public school, stayed out of trouble. She was the kind of girl teachers loved, quiet but smart, never caused problems. At 16, she was getting ready to graduate early, had plans to go to community college, maybe become a nurse. She wanted to help people like Miss Geneva helped people. But that spring, Miss Geneva got sick. "Cancer," the doctor said, moving fast. On a Tuesday evening in May, Miss Geneva called Adrianna to her bedside. The old woman looked small against the pillows, but her eyes were still sharp, still full of fire. She reached under her pillow and pulled out a sealed envelope. "Baby girl, I need you to keep this safe. Don't open it yet. You'll know when the time comes, but when you open it, you gon' understand everything." Adrianna took the envelope with shaking hands. "Grandma, what is this?" "It's the truth, baby, about who you are, about your father. I promised him I wouldn't tell you until you were ready, and I kept that promise. But you gon' need this one day." "Is he alive?" Miss Geneva smiled, tears running down her weathered cheeks. "He loves you more than you know. He had to leave to protect you. That's all I can say." 3 days later, Miss Geneva passed in her sleep, holding Adrianna's hand. At 16 years old, Adrianna was alone in the world. Social services came, tried to place her in foster care. She bounced between 3 homes in 2 years, never fitting in, never feeling safe. But she held onto that envelope, kept it in her backpack, then in her purse, then in a drawer next to her bed. Never opened it. Miss Geneva said she'd know when, and she trusted that. Adrianna put herself through community college, working double shifts at a diner. She studied nursing, graduated top of her class, got a job at a community health clinic. She worked the overnight shift because it paid more. She saved every dollar, lived in a studio apartment with second-hand furniture, and sent money to the church back home for Miss Geneva's grave upkeep. At 26, she was exhausted but proud. She'd made something of herself. And then she met Kwame. He walked into the clinic one night during a hospital fundraiser. He was charming, confident, worked in medical sales. He had that smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He asked for her number before he left, called her the next day, took her to dinner that weekend. "You're different," he told her, over pasta she couldn't afford. "Most women I meet, they want something from me. But you don't want nothing. You just want to be good." She fell for him, hard, fast. He made her feel seen after years of being invisible. They dated for 6 months, and he proposed at the same restaurant where they had their first date. She said yes with tears in her eyes because she thought she'd finally found what she lost when Miss Geneva died. Family. The wedding was small. His mother Lorraine and sister Tracy came, but they didn't smile much. Lorraine pulled Adrianna aside before the ceremony and said, "You better be good to my son. Don't you trap him with no babies." Adrianna just nodded, too happy to let the words sting. Within a year, she was pregnant with twins. Kwame seemed excited at first, set up the nursery, came to doctor appointments, rubbed her feet when they swelled. But Lorraine and Tracy got colder, started making comments. "She did trap him. Now he'll never leave her. Those babies probably ain't even his." Adrianna tried to ignore it, focused on the life growing inside her. Caleb and Chloe were born on a Tuesday morning in October, 6 minutes apart, screaming their way into the world. When the nurse put them in her arms, Adrianna cried so hard she couldn't breathe. She finally had family again, but Kwame started changing, working later, coming home smelling like perfume that wasn't hers, making excuses. Business dinner, client meeting. "You wouldn't understand, you just work at a clinic." The insults started small. "You let yourself go. Why can't you dress like other wives?" Simone gets it. She understands ambition. Simone Carter, his new business partner, a woman with a MBA and designer clothes and a laugh that sounded like broken glass. She started showing up everywhere. Family dinners, weekend barbecues, kids' birthday parties, and Lorraine and Tracy loved her. "Now this is the kind of woman Kwame should have married," Lorraine said loud enough for Adrianna to hear. Tracy nodded. Classy, educated, not some charity case from the country. Adrianna kept her mouth shut, kept taking care of her babies, kept working her shifts, kept praying things would get better. They didn't. 6 months ago, things fell apart. Kwame stopped pretending. Simone started showing up at the twins' doctor appointments, just appeared in the waiting room like she had a right to be there. The receptionist, confused, looked at Adrianna. "I'm their mother," Adrianna said quietly. Simone smiled. "For now." Something broke in Adrianna that day, not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet crack in her foundation. 2 weeks later, Kwame served her divorce papers at home. The twins were watching cartoons in the next room, their little voices singing along to theme songs. He dropped the papers on the kitchen table while she was making them lunch. "I'm filing for full custody," he said, no emotion in his voice. "Simone's gonna be their real mom." Adrianna looked up from the sandwiches she was cutting. "You can't just replace me. Watch me. You got no money, no family, no power. Who's gonna stop me?" He walked out without looking back. The next day, Lorraine and Tracy showed up to take the twins for the weekend. They never brought them back. Adrianna called, texted, begged. They ignored her. When she showed up at Lorraine's house, the police were called. They said she was trespassing. The officer, a young white boy who looked bored, told her, "Ma'am, you need to handle this in court." The court gave her supervised visits, 1 hour, twice a week, with a social worker watching. Caleb and Chloe would cry when she had to leave. "Mommy, don't go. Please don't go." "I'll be back, babies. Mommy's coming back." But every time she left that visitation room, a piece of her died. She went home to an empty apartment, sat on the floor surrounded by the twins' toys they'd left behind. A stuffed elephant, a coloring book, one tiny shoe. She cried until she couldn't cry no more. Just sat there numb, staring at the walls. That's when she saw it. The old wooden box on the top shelf of her closet. The box with Miss Geneva's things. The envelope. Adrianna pulled it down with shaking hands, sat on the floor and held it in her lap. 16 years she'd carried this envelope. 16 years she waited for the right time. Miss Geneva's voice echoed in her head. "You'll know when the time comes." She opened it. Inside was a letter, handwritten on expensive paper, a birth certificate and a hospital bracelet, tiny, the kind they put on newborns. The letter was addressed to her. "My dearest daughter Adrianna, if you're reading this, Miss Geneva has passed and you are alone. I'm sorry I couldn't be there for you. I'm sorry I had to leave when you were just a baby. Your mother and I loved each other more than life, but my world was dangerous. I had enemies, people who would have used you and your mother to hurt me. So I sent you away to keep you safe. I've watched over you from a distance, made sure you and Geneva always had what you needed. The house was paid for. The bills were covered. Geneva never told you because I asked her not to. I wanted you to grow up normal, safe, without the weight of my world on your shoulders. But you're not a child anymore. And if you need me, I'm here. I've always been here. Call this number. It's a private line. Only you have it. I never stopped loving you. I never will. Your father, Marcus Whitmore." Adrianna stared at the name. Marcus Whitmore. It sounded familiar, but she couldn't place it. She pulled out her phone with trembling fingers and typed the name into Google. The screen filled with articles, Forbes lists, business magazines, photos of a man in tailored suits standing in front of skyscrapers. Marcus Whitmore, net worth $847 billion, owner of Whitmore Healthcare Systems, 17 hospitals across the country, medical research facilities, real estate empire, pharmaceutical companies, the third richest man in America, her father. Adrianna's phone fell from her hands. She stared at the birth certificate. Father's name, Marcus Whitmore. Mother's name, Angela Thompson. Child's name, Adrianna Geneva Thompson Whitmore. All her life she thought she was nobody, thought she was alone, thought she was just a girl from a small town with nothing to her name. She was wrong. Now we're back in that courtroom with the judge waiting for an answer and Kwame smiling like he already won. Adrianna stood slowly, the envelope still in her hands. She looked at the judge and said clear and steady, "Your Honor, I'd like to request a forensic handwriting analysis of these documents, and I have someone here who can verify my identity and provide additional evidence." Kwame laughed. "Nobody's coming to save you, Adrianna. Accept it. You lost." The courtroom doors opened. Every head turned. A man walked in, tall and commanding in a tailored gray suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. Behind him came 3 men in dark suits, security, moving like they were protecting the president. The man's face was weathered but strong, his hair silver at the temples, his eyes sharp and taking in everything. The judge stood up. Half the courtroom stood up without thinking, that instinctive respect you give to power when it walks in a room. "Mr. Whitmore," the judge said, her voice different now, careful, "what brings you to my courtroom?" Marcus Whitmore's eyes swept the room and landed on Adrianna. Something softened in his face. Then his gaze moved to Kwame, and it went cold as winter. "Your Honor," Marcus said, his voice deep and even, "that's my daughter. Those are my grandchildren, and these documents are forged." The courtroom exploded, people gasping, whispering, craning their necks to see. Kwame's face drained of all color, his mouth opened but nothing came out. Lorraine grabbed the bench in front of her like she might pass out. Tracy just stared, eyes wide. Simone looked from Marcus to Kwame and back, panic flashing across her face. Marcus walked down the aisle to where Adrianna stood. He stopped in front of her, and for a moment they just looked at each other. Then he opened his arms and she fell into them, tears streaming down her face. "I got you, baby girl," he whispered. "I got you now." The judge cleared her throat. "Mr. Whitmore, you're making serious accusations. I assume you have evidence?" "Yes, Your Honor." Marcus gestured to one of his security team, who approached the bench with a leather folder. "In this folder, you'll find hospital records from the birth of Caleb and Chloe Brooks at Mercy General Hospital, which I own. You'll also find security footage from the dates these documents claim my daughter visited an attorney's office to sign away her rights. The footage proves she was working a double shift at the community clinic during those exact dates and times. Additionally, we have a forensic signature analysis from 3 independent experts showing that the signature on these documents was digitally copied from old employment paperwork." The lawyer handed everything to the judge. She started reading, her face getting more serious with each page. Marcus turned to look at Simone. "We also have evidence showing that Miss Carter worked in medical records at Mercy General until 3 months ago. She had access to patient files, including my daughter's. She had the means and opportunity to forge these documents." Simone shot to her feet. "That's a lie. I didn't—" "Sit down," the judge said, her voice sharp as a knife. Marcus looked at Kwame now. Kwame had shrunk in his seat, looking small in a way he'd never looked before. "You thought my daughter was alone," Marcus said quietly. "You thought she had no power, no family, no one to protect her. You thought that made her weak, made her easy to erase. You were wrong on all counts." Kwame tried to speak. I didn't know." She never said. "She shouldn't have had to say. You should have protected her. Instead, you conspired with a criminal to steal her children." The judge set down the papers. "Mr. Brooks, Miss Carter, I'm ordering an immediate investigation into document forgery and fraud. I'm also granting Mrs. Brooks full emergency custody of the minor children, effective immediately. Your supervised visitation rights are suspended pending the outcome of this investigation." Kwame finally found his voice. "Your Honor, please, I'm their father." "A father who tried to give his children to someone else," the judge said coldly. "A father who humiliated their mother in public, who called her unfit, who tried to erase her from their lives. No, Mr. Brooks, you don't get to be their father right now. Maybe not ever again." Adrianna took a breath. She'd been quiet this whole time, letting her father speak, letting the truth unfold. But now she stepped forward. When she spoke, her voice was steady, clear, and it cut through the courtroom like a sword. "Kwame, I stayed quiet because my grandmother taught me that real strength doesn't need to yell. I let you humiliate me because I wanted to believe you'd remember the woman you married. The woman who stood by you when you were working your way up. The woman who raised your children while you were out building your career. The woman who loved you when love was all she had to give." She paused, and you could hear people breathing in the silence. "But you didn't forget me, Kwame. You erased me. On purpose. You looked at me and decided I was worth nothing. You thought you could steal my children and give them to a woman who committed fraud to get them." She turned to Simone. "You wanted my life so bad you forged my signature. You pretended to love my children to get close to a man who was never yours. Now you get to live with the consequences." Adrianna walked to her father and took his hand. She looked back at Kwame one more time. "I don't hate you, I just don't recognize you anymore. And maybe that's sadder than hate." She walked out of that courtroom holding her father's hand, and the only sound was her footsteps and people crying. The next 2 weeks moved fast. Emergency custody hearing gave Adrianna full custody immediately. Caleb and Chloe came back to her crying and holding on tight, like they were afraid she'd disappear. "Mommy, don't leave us again," Chloe whispered into her neck. "Never, baby, Mommy's not going nowhere." Kwame's world collapsed. His medical sales company dropped him the same day the story hit the news. Turned out Marcus owned shares in the parent company. His reputation was destroyed. The man who tried to steal a trillionaire's grandkids became his identity. Couldn't get a job, couldn't show his face without people whispering. He lost his apartment, his car, everything he'd built. 2 weeks after the court hearing, the FBI arrested Simone at her apartment at 6 in the morning. Document forgery, identity fraud, conspiracy to commit kidnapping. They found evidence she'd sold medical records to multiple people. Adrianna wasn't even her first victim. She was just the one who got caught. Simone faced 10 to 15 years in federal prison. Kwame tried to visit her in county jail before her trial. She refused to see him, told her lawyer, "I don't know that man. He manipulated me into everything." Threw him right under the bus to save herself. Lorraine and Tracy faced their own consequences. Their church community learned the truth. People they'd known for years stopped speaking to them. Tracy lost her job in HR. Turns out the company couldn't have someone who supported custody fraud representing them. Lorraine had to sell her house. The mortgage company Marcus owned called in the loan. Perfectly legal, perfectly timed. 3 months after the trial, they showed up at Adrianna's new place. It wasn't a mansion, just a nice house in a good neighborhood, with a yard where Caleb and Chloe could play. They rang the doorbell looking small and desperate. Adrianna opened the door. Marcus stood behind her. "We need to talk," Lorraine said, her voice shaking. "We made mistakes, we were wrong, but we're family. Can you help us? Talk to your father, ask him to—" "No," Adrianna said simply. "Please, we're losing everything. You said I wasn't fit to be a mother. You called me trash. You helped steal my children. Now you want mercy." Tracy started crying. "We're sorry. We'll do anything. You had a choice every single day. You chose cruelty. Now you get to live with it. Don't come back here." Adrianna closed the door. Marcus looked at his daughter with pride. "You're stronger than I ever was." "I learned from the best," she said, touching the gold chain around her neck. Miss Geneva's chain. 6 months later, Kwame sat in a studio apartment that smelled like mildew and regret. He had a job stocking shelves at a grocery store overnight, paid child support he could barely afford. His credit was destroyed. Everything was gone. He got to see the twins once a month, supervised visits at a community center. They didn't run to him anymore. Caleb looked at him like he was a stranger. Chloe held her mother's hand tight and wouldn't let go. "Hey, buddy," Kwame said, trying to smile. "You want to play basketball?" Caleb looked at the floor. "Why did you try to give us away, Daddy?" The question hit Kwame in the chest. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. What could he say? How do you explain to a 4-year-old that you chose ambition over love, that you let pride destroy your family, that you thought power was more important than the woman who gave you everything? "I made a mistake," he finally whispered. "Grandpa Marcus says mistakes are when you do something wrong once. You did it lots of times. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." Out of the mouths of babies come the hardest truths. 1 year after that courtroom day, Adrianna stood in front of a hospital in North Carolina. The building was new, beautiful, modern, but the sign above the door made her cry every time she saw it. Miss Geneva Memorial Children's Hospital. Marcus had built it in her grandmother's honor. Free health care for low-income families. The best doctors, the best equipment, all funded by Whitmore Healthcare Systems. And Adrianna ran the nursing program. She still worked, didn't need to, not with her father's wealth, but that wasn't who she was. She helped train new nurses, taught them about compassion and dignity, about treating every patient like family, just like Miss Geneva taught her. On a Sunday morning, Adrianna took Caleb and Chloe to visit Miss Geneva's grave. The old church cemetery was quiet, peaceful, full of magnolia trees and birdsong. The headstone was simple granite with Miss Geneva's name and the words, "She loved loud in a quiet way." Adrianna placed fresh flowers at the base, white roses, Miss Geneva's favorite. The twins stood on either side of her, holding her hands. "Mommy, why are you crying?" Caleb asked. "Because I'm happy, baby. Your great-grandma saved us, even after she was gone." Chloe looked up with those big brown eyes. "Did we win, Mommy?" Adrianna smiled through her tears. "We didn't have to win, sweetheart. We just had to survive." That evening, Marcus came over for dinner. He did that a lot now, made up for lost time by being the grandfather Caleb and Chloe deserved. He read them stories in his deep voice, taught them about their heritage, told them about their grandmother Angela, who he loved so much. He gave up everything to keep Adrianna safe. After the twins went to bed, Adrianna and Marcus sat on the porch drinking sweet tea and watching fireflies dance in the yard, just like she used to do with Miss Geneva. "You ever regret it?" Adrianna asked, "leaving me with her? Missing all those years?" Marcus was quiet for a long time. "Every single day, but Geneva raised you right, raised you strong, better than I could have done with all my money and power. She gave you something I never could have given you." "What's that?" "Roots, real ones, the kind that hold you steady when the world tries to blow you over." Adrianna pulled out the old envelope from her pocket. She still carried it sometimes, worn soft from handling. She read the last line of her father's letter out loud. "You were never alone, baby girl. You were just waiting for the right moment to rise." "I was wrong about the first part," Marcus said. "You were alone, for too long, but you rose anyway. That's all you, baby girl. That's all you." Inside the house, Caleb called out, "Mommy, Grandpa, come see what I built." They went inside to see a tower of blocks reaching halfway to the ceiling, crooked but standing. Chloe clapped her hands. "It's a castle for brave girls." "And brave boys," Caleb added seriously. Adrianna hugged them both, breathed in that kid smell of shampoo and innocence. Marcus watched his daughter with her children and saw Geneva's wisdom, Angela's beauty, and something uniquely Adrianna, strength that don't announce itself, power that moves in silence, love that survives everything. That's the thing about real strength. It don't show up loud, don't need an audience, don't need validation. It just shows up when it's time, quiet and sure, and changes everything. Kwame thought silence meant weakness. He was wrong. He thought being alone meant being powerless. He was wrong. He thought he could erase a woman's worth by stealing her children, by humiliating her, by trying to replace her with someone shinier and newer. He was very wrong, because real strength don't announce itself. It just shows up when it's time. And when it does, the loudest people suddenly got nothing to say. The powerful find out they were never powerful at all. And the woman they tried to break, she was never broken, just waiting, just gathering herself, just getting ready to remind the world who she really was. Adrianna wasn't a victim, never was. She was a woman who knew the value of patience, who understood that silence ain't surrender, who learned from the strongest woman she ever knew that you can survive anything if you remember where you came from. And she came from love. From sacrifice, from a grandmother who worked herself to the bone to raise a child that wasn't even hers by blood, from a father who gave up his daughter to keep her safe, from a mother who gave her last breath to bring her into this world. That kind of foundation don't crack. It just waits for the right moment to show what it's made of. So if you're out there watching this and you're going through something, if you feel small, if you feel forgotten, if people are trying to erase you, diminish you, make you feel like you're nothing, Remember Adrianna. Remember that silence ain't weakness. Remember that your power don't need to be loud to be real. Remember that the people trying to break you might wake up one day and realize they were fighting something they never understood. Your moment is coming. Your truth is coming. Your father might walk through those courtroom doors one day, or maybe your strength comes from somewhere else, somewhere deeper. But it's coming. Just hold on. Stay kind, stay strong, and remember who you are.